Hello, welcome to class. It's Monday. That's my plan. It's not really Monday when I'm doing this video, but the plan is that you're seeing this on Monday. So today the lesson is an introduction or background over some medieval time period. When you read stuff from a time period like British Lit or early American Lit or whatever era you're reading from, it's important to know what was going on during that time period because history can definitely impact the literature or the media or the images that come out of a time period. So if you imagine like right now, the world right now, things that are written, published, posted on social media are going to be extremely impacted by the world that is today. So we got to go way back in time. So we need to figure out what was going on because that can lead us to understand why they wrote the way they wrote and will help people in the future understand why we wrote the way we did. Okay, so here we go. First, I have a short video. It is, I believe, about 10 minutes long. It says the history of English in 10 minutes. This guy talks really, really, really fast, but it's very interesting. Actually, if you find yourself laughing, that means you're listening to the words because he's pretty funny. But it gives you kind of an overview of the medieval time period, the early Anglo writers, which might not mean anything to you. That time period happened a long, long time ago when there was lots of movement going on and lots of civilizations changing and people moving around. So first part of the assignment is, or you could do it second, doesn't really matter, is going to be to watch this video link right in this area and write simply 5 things that you learned from the video. So stick with it. It's kind of exciting, actually. The language of English has been impacted for many, many, many years. So it's kind of cool to see where it started and where it's ended. Okay, part 2 of what we're doing is we're going to focus on main ideas, details, and text interaction. So I want you to kind of practice reading nonfiction text and gathering information, which will be like textbook reading. Nonfiction reading as a part of a college course feeling. So the standards that we are working on are understanding the structure of the text. A lot of times people will refer to the organizational features. That simply means things like headings, headers that might be a different size, pictures, graph, or how the writer decides to lay all this stuff on the page and why he made those decisions. So that's kind of what the text structure and organizational features mean. We are going to practice reading, so we're going to identify. We're going to underline the headings as we go, just because it's a good practice to interact with the text, whether it's digital right here, or you get your own textbook that you can write in, you're going to do the same things. So we're going to underline the headings. Don't worry, I will model this for you. We're going to underline the headings. We are going to highlight one important detail from each paragraph. We do that because a lot of times a singular paragraph has a nice idea or an important piece of information. That's why we function in paragraphs, because we kind of have a new start to a new idea. So it's important to look for those ideas in each paragraph. So one kind of idea in a paragraph is just where my brain kind of starts when I start trying to pull out important information in a text. As we read and highlight important information, so one highlight per paragraph, this is the easy part of the game: structure or organization, identifying details in the evidence of the paragraph. And then this part 3, becomes the hardest part to do. So throughout this whole assignment, you will only be required to make 5, I say personal comments, because we're going to work on interpretations and inferences, which are like the higher level thinking. So it's something that you have to create on your own. No fear. I'm going to do a few for you, and then I'm going to let you try on your own. So I'm going to model what it should look like. Please know that every heading is underlined. You're going to highlight one detail, and you're going to make 5 interpretations or inferences throughout the whole text. So 5, 5, 5 total through the whole thing. Okay, here we go. Basic. History.com is the source that I got this from, actually. It's a credible source that just gives me a nice overview of the time period. So I'm going to underline that. As I read the first paragraph, I scan and it says people use the phrase Middle Ages to describe Europe between the fall of Rome in 476 CE and the beginning of the Renaissance. Many scholars refer to this as the medieval period. Instead, they say the Middle Ages. They say, incorrectly, implies that the period is an insignificant moment sandwiched between two more important peaks is kind of the idea. So I scan the paragraph and I first go back just to try to pull out the detail. The information that I wanted to highlight was the time period that the Middle Ages happened. So I simply go over here and just highlight it because I thought that was important. The other thing that struck my attention, which is an interpretation or an inference, is the text doesn't explicitly say it, but I thought it, which means I took some of the text and some of my knowledge and I made an inference. So when it says incorrectly implies that the period is an insignificant blip sandwiched. So that language, the language that the author decided to use, is meaningful. So I took this whole thing and I am going to want to make a comment on it. So I strictly highlight it and hit the little plus sign. I know I went fast there and I apologize. I have the plus button and I am going to make a comment that I made earlier, and I just have to remember where it is. Now, if something says it incorrectly implies that the period is an insignificant blip, that meant to me, and I'm going to write what I understand or believe. I think that that means this period does have value, yet people don't pay attention to it. It seems to me if you use a blip, it is like something very small and that is kind of pushed to the side. So I think the significance of the period is pushed away. It kind of reminded me of a middle child. Like, you're not the oldest, but you're not the baby. You're just like this thing that happened in the middle of like the first and the last. Okay. That's my inference. It doesn't say people don't pay attention to it. It doesn't say people disregard it, but that's the feeling that I get, that this period has much more significance and value than we typically think. So I'm going to hit the comment. So those are the 3 steps that I'm going to do all the way throughout. I'm going to underline, I'm going to highlight, and I'm going to comment. Now I condensed those really, really small and did them right there for you. But you only have to do 5 of these throughout. Okay, let me try one more for you and then I will let you practice. So again, in case you did not remember, I am going to underline because it's important to draw your attention to those. And I'm going to highlight something that I think is significant. It says in the Middle Ages, the phrase the Middle Ages tells us more about the Renaissance that followed than it does the era itself. Starting around the 14th century, European thinkers, writers, and artists began to look back and celebrate different culture in Greece and Rome. Accordingly, they dismissed the period after the fall of Rome as the Middle or even Dark Ages, and in which no significant science accomplishments were made, no great art, no great leaders were born, and the people of the Middle Ages had squandered the advances of their predecessors. This argument went on for a long time to historians, and they were English historian Edward Gibbon as barbarism and religion. So I first need to highlight something. The thing that struck me was it felt like they dismissed a lot of this stuff that was done. So I'm going to highlight that they dismissed all of these accomplishments, and I'm going to highlight that as my sentence. The other thing that I thought, which is an inference, is if the Middle Ages tells us more about the Renaissance than the actual period of the Middle Ages, if it tells us more about the Renaissance, my inference is the Renaissance is extremely important. And like people think this period was better than the previous period. Okay. That's kind of a far stretch, but either way, I tried to show you. Next, it says here, did you know? It talks about a mysterious disease called the Black Death that killed 20 million people in Europe, 30% of the continent. It was especially deadly in cities where it was impossible for transmission. So it's a little eerie of the things similar right now, but I did just highlight that the Black Death killed 30% of the population, and I'm just going to go ahead and highlight that. I want to show you one more inference. You can go back and read the other stuff, but I wanted you to see one more inference that I made. Down here, it says that after the fall of Rome, no single state or government united the people who lived on the European continent. Instead, the Catholic Church became the most powerful institution of the medieval period. That struck me when I read it, and I decided to make a comment on it like this. My inference, it doesn't say, but I can make an assumption. The inference is that, let's see, literature, art, politics, science were probably very religious. Everything I can assume, if the Catholic Church became really big during this period, that I can assume that a lot of stuff coming out of this time period are going to be related to the Catholic Church or religion. So I will slap that in my comments, and now I have made another inference. So you might need to backtrack a little bit. You need to highlight here and underline here. You will continue to interact with the text as you read the rest of the document. It doesn't take all that long, really, but I want you to understand how you need to pay attention to the features, how you need to pay attention to explicitly stated detail, and implicit inferences and interpretations. So you can continue reading, highlight, and make your comments. You need 1 highlight per paragraph and 5 inferences throughout. Do the best you can. If they're not perfect, I completely understand. I will try to give you some feedback or point you in the direction. The goal is, what did you think as you read it? And it's a good practice. Okay, watch the video and enjoy taking notes. You will feel accomplished. See ya.